Most people don't realize that the early morning isn't just the beginning of the day. It's the foundation where the blueprint of your entire life is laid down. You might call it a routine, a daily ritual, or simply preparation time before work. But for me, the morning is the moment that shapes identity. It's anything but trivial. In fact, if you observe closely, you'll see every successful person has a morning that's ritualistic, intentional, and above all, designed to build their life. Because the moment you open your eyes, you're standing at a hidden crossroads that most never even notice. Will you take charge of this day, or will you let it sweep you away? I've observed hundreds of people and could often predict their future just by how they lived through one morning. I didn't need to see their planner. I didn't need to hear them talk about ambition. Just watching how they got out of bed, how they responded to the first sound of the day, what they did in their first 10 minutes, was enough to know where they were headed, because morning is the most honest mirror. It doesn't lie to you. It shows whether you have discipline or not, whether you truly have goals or are just chasing impulsive inspiration, whether you have the inner stillness to live by your values or are just rushing to keep up with the world. You'll see a clear difference between two kinds of people, those who react and those who lead. The reactive wake up to the sound of an alarm, scramble for their phone, read worrisome news, respond to emails, messages, deadlines, and the feeling of being busy. They don't enter the day. They get dragged into it. In contrast, the proactive rise with a quiet but fierce resolve. They don't let the world wake them. They wake themselves with the intention to hold on to stillness, the intention to begin with clarity of thought, the intention not to waste energy on meaningless noise. And when they get out of bed, it's not a mechanical act. It's a declaration. I'm in control of my life, starting from this moment. You might think those first 10 minutes aren't important, but they are the subtle fork in the road that leads you toward two completely different ways of living. If you wake up and get pulled into the news, negativity, comparison, or instability, you're handing over control of your mind to the world. And then your entire day will be dictated by randomness, conflict, and pressure. But if you do the opposite, if you use those 10 minutes to realign your mind, return inward, write a single affirmation, breathe slowly, and remember who you are, then you've just reclaimed the wheel. You're not drifting anymore. You're steering. I know you might feel too busy, that you can't turn your morning into something sacred, but you don't need to make it a complicated ritual. You just need to understand this. You are not allowed to lose it, because if you lose the morning, you lose your direction for the entire day. And if you repeat that for 5 days, 50 days, 500 days, you'll end up losing your life quietly, but irreversibly. There's a truth you need to face. Every morning, you're signing an invisible contract with your future. The way you wake up, the first words you speak, the way you think about yourself in those first 5 minutes, those are the first lines in the plan you are unconsciously executing. Do you want to live with intention or be led? Do you want to build a solid identity or simply react to your environment? Do you want each day to be a step forward or just another loop? I'm not advising you to follow a specific formula. I'm telling you a lived experience. When I changed how I started my day, my entire internal operating system changed. I no longer lived in confusion. I was no longer driven by short-term emotions. I began to realize it wasn't the world that decided my success. It was me. Through the smallest choices I made each morning, and the biggest of those choices was refusing to overlook the importance of the morning. So I now hand this question to you. How will you begin tomorrow? Because the way you begin is the way you will live. And the way you live is the way you are designing your entire life. There is no way to build inner strength without going through difficulty. And the time to begin is not midday when everything has already swept you away, but the very moment you open your eyes. The moment you leave sleep behind is also when your willpower is at its weakest. And that's exactly when your true strength is decided. Because if you can conquer yourself when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, when no one is pushing you, then you're establishing a new mental framework, the mindset of someone who no longer avoids challenges. Most people start their day by choosing the easiest thing, scrolling through their phone, pulling the blanket over their head, finding excuses to delay. They call it needing time to wake up, but the truth is, they are silently surrendering. Every time you hit the snooze button, you're not just delaying time. You're delaying yourself. You're sending a silent signal to your own mind that today, it's still okay to be weak, that today, you don't have to be decisive yet. But if you want to upgrade yourself, you can't let the very first opportunity of the day slip away. I'm not telling you about perfection. I'm telling you a strategy that has helped me flip many bad days, many sluggish weeks, and many cycles of self-doubt. This strategy is simple, but not easy. Choose to do one difficult thing, right when you feel like doing nothing at all. It could be splashing cold water on your face. It could be stepping outside for some movement. It could be opening a blank page and writing down the thing you've been avoiding. What it is doesn't matter. What matters is that you clearly know it's something you don't want to do, but doing it will make you stronger. In that very moment when you do that difficult thing, you're resetting your relationship with yourself. You're telling yourself, I am a person of action, not just of thought. You're shortening the gap between intention and execution, and that gap is where all stagnation has lived. When you repeat this habit often enough, your mind starts to understand morning is no longer a safe zone. It's the battleground where I activate my inner force. And suddenly, your entire internal system begins shifting toward clarity, command, and discipline. You don't need to do something extraordinary. You just need to do something not easy. Because you're not training your body, you're training your will. And willpower only develops when placed in a field of resistance. The earlier you choose to face it, the weaker that resistance becomes. Something that made you hesitate at 6 o'clock AI will feel like a small task by 6:10. You've just rejected procrastination. And for the rest of the day, you're no longer operating in a compromising state. You've already won early, and that win becomes the foundation of every action that follows. I used to think I needed inspiration to begin, but the truth is the opposite. Inspiration only comes after action. Successful people don't wait until they feel ready. They create readiness by acting first. That may sound counterintuitive, but it's the simplest psychological truth. The mind is like a muscle. You must train it to respond to your command, not to your feelings. If you keep indulging in comfort, your mind will betray you in times of crisis. But if you train it to respond with discipline, it will become the strongest ally you'll ever have in life. And I want you to ask yourself this every morning: what is the difficult thing I'm avoiding? It doesn't have to be something grand. It just has to be something you know you should do, but the weaker part of you doesn't want to face. Identify it, reach for it, and complete it without compromise, because you're not just doing a task, you're making a declaration that you are someone who takes responsibility for yourself. And once you do something difficult in the morning, you walk out of the house with the mindset of someone who leads, someone who doesn't wait for the world to arrive before responding, but someone who initiates the impact. Don't underestimate a small action, because it's not small. It's the first step in a chain of positive psychological reactions. One right action creates belief. Belief creates strength, and strength fuels further action, stronger, deeper, and more certain. That is the positive feedback loop of someone who is rising. Every morning, you have a chance to activate that loop or miss it. And what determines that is not how talented you are, but whether you dare to do something difficult the moment you open your eyes. Remember, the reward doesn't come from the result of what you do. The reward comes from the person you are becoming each time you choose not to surrender. While others press snooze, you rise. While others choose easy, you choose right. And that very choice, that difficult thing, is what is shaping the version of you that no one can defeat. Every morning, even before you're fully awake, your mind is already registering the first signals. What you may not realize is this: the very words you choose in that moment are reprogramming your entire internal mental operating system. No complex ritual is needed. No guide is necessary. Just one sentence you say to yourself, and that sentence becomes the guiding current for your entire day. Most people lose control of this. They wake up and unconsciously release what seem like harmless complaints. I'm so tired. Today's going to be tough. Oh, here we go again. These words may sound like fleeting feelings, but in reality, they're commands. They're signal directives sent straight to the subconscious. And once the subconscious receives the command, it begins its job, aligning everything around you with what you just declared. I don't need to convince you that words have power because you've felt it every day. One encouraging word at the right time can lift you up. One cruel criticism can pull you down. So why not use your own words to lift yourself every morning? When you step into the day and choose to speak what you aim for, you are giving a command not only to the world, but to your own nervous system. You're telling your brain, this is what we're pursuing. Align all my energy, focus, and responses in this direction. I used to begin my mornings in exhaustion with nameless sighs, with subtle self-doubt laced into every sentence, and then I would live a day exactly in line with what I had said. But when I started changing my language, instead of saying, I have to get through today, I said, I was born to own this day. Everything shifted. Not because it was a magic phrase, but because it was a repositioning of identity. I was no longer reacting, I was commanding. And words were the first tool that helped me reclaim that position. You don't have to say empty affirmations. You just need to speak the truth you want to believe. Don't let your words mirror fleeting emotions. Let them reflect the identity you are choosing to build. If you're aiming for strength, speak words that express power. If you're cultivating perseverance, speak commitment. If you need courage, speak trust in yourself, even if you don't fully feel it yet. Because the subconscious doesn't care whether it's true or false. It only records what you repeat. And when you say something enough, it becomes belief. Belief creates action, and action creates results. Everything you're living today began with a sentence you once accepted in the past. I'm not suggesting you stand in front of a mirror and yell out positive slogans in forced enthusiasm. I'm pointing you to something more subtle. Be intentional with every sentence you speak to yourself each morning. Say it in a firm tone, as if you're assigning a task to a team already waiting inside your mind. Because that's exactly what's happening. Your brain functions like an operating system waiting for input, and you are the one entering the code, one sentence at a time. At first, it may feel fake. You might not truly believe the words you say, but don't let that stop you. Because inner transformation doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens when you act as if you already are. And words are the very first action you can control. The more you choose language that's strong, clear, and filled with intention, the more you send a signal to your mind. I am awake, I am back, and I am running this life. Try this every morning before you touch your phone, before you let any outside noise into your mind. Say one sentence aloud, just for you. A real sentence. Not to fake positivity, but to remind yourself that you woke up not just to exist, but to build. It could be, I am moving closer to the strongest version of myself. Or, I don't wait for the world's approval. I act according to the values I've chosen. Or simply, I was born to make an impact. Choose a sentence that makes you stand upright, not bow your head. And most importantly, don't let your morning language be a one-time ritual. Let it become your default operating program. Because once you consciously rewrite your internal language, you are redefining the person you're becoming. The first sentence you say to yourself each morning is never meaningless. It is the beginning of everything. And you deserve to begin with clarity, with decisiveness, and with an unshakable declaration. Today, I am the master of my mind. Your body is not just a shell for the mind to reside in. It is a tool, a control system, a doorway to a power within you that you have yet to fully access. Every morning when you get out of bed, you are not simply standing up, you are sending your first signal to yourself. Will you operate today as someone in command or someone being swept along? And there is no signal stronger than awakening your body with intentional movement. Most people begin their mornings in a state of sluggishness. Drooping shoulders, sluggish steps, shallow breathing, a glazed look, and then they enter the day in a weakened state without understanding why their energy keeps draining. But you are different. If you know how to use your body, you can reverse your entire mental state within the first few minutes of the day. You can ignite confidence not with words, but through posture. You can shift from drowsy to alert, from passive to proactive, simply by changing your breath, opening your chest, or the way you place your foot on the floor. I'm not talking about fitness. I'm talking about vitality. A person may not train formally, may not run every day, but if they know how to connect with their body, the moment they wake up, they are already ahead of 90% of the world. Because the body is the bridge between will and emotion. The more control you have over your body, the shorter the distance becomes between your goals and your action. A simple gesture like stretching, breathing deeply, or stepping quickly into the light, these are not just physical movements, they are activation commands for your entire awakened nervous system. It's how you signal, I am ready to face this day with all the strength I've got. Think back to the last time you were in a negative state. I'm sure your body wasn't standing tall. You were slouched, eyes down, shallow breathing, muscles unengaged, because the mind and body never act separately. If you change one, the other responds. That's why every morning I urge you to send a clear signal to your body. Stand tall, step with force, breathe deeply, move. Even if just for 10 minutes, you don't need a gym. You just need a decision not to let your body be a passive object. When your body moves, your brain receives a message. We are not waiting. We are moving forward. Even if you're anxious, discouraged, or unmotivated, the moment your body acts, your mind will shift to follow. Emotions are not the guide. Action is the pathfinder. The more you act like someone strong, the more that strength is felt in every cell. And confidence is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you embody. I used to start my day in a fog of sluggishness that lingered for hours. But it wasn't until I deliberately stood up, stepped quickly outside, let the wind and light touch my skin, let my heart beat stronger through movement, that I felt the rhythm of life waiting for me. You don't have to run 5 kilometers. You don't need perfect form. You just need to move beyond stillness. Every movement is a declaration. I'm no longer held back by my mood. I'm choosing to move with life. You can start with simple steps. Stand tall and hold that posture for 2 minutes. Take 10 deep, steady breaths, expanding your chest, march in place for a few minutes, or simply walk outdoors for 15 minutes. No headphones, no phone, just you and your own rhythm. What you're doing is not just warming up your body. You are resetting the entire energy field inside you, reclaiming control over a mental state that modern life and everyday anxieties often steal away. I want you to understand this clearly. Movement is not just a physical act. It is a silent declaration. A person who moves with inner weight carries an energy field that others can feel. They don't need to shout. They don't need to strain. They just walk with clarity in their posture. And that clarity begins in the morning when no one is watching. That's where real strength is built, not on the stage, but in the silent moments where you command yourself. Your body is the deepest lever you can use each day to reshape how you live, work, respond, and present yourself. If you neglect it, you are withdrawing half your personal power. But if you claim it, actively engage it, and treat it as a gateway into your inner force, you will never begin your day in doubt. You will enter it with quiet strength, grounded presence, and a body that is not just a tool, but a living expression of an unshakable spirit. There are things you cannot tell anyone. There are thoughts that pass by so quickly you forget they ever existed. There are emotions that come and go like water shadows on a mirror. But if you don't capture them, you will never truly understand yourself. Writing is the only way for you to listen to the true voice within, before the world intrudes, before social media, news, responsibilities, and the crowd layer upon you thousands of sounds that do not belong to you. Writing is not for others to read. Writing is for you to see yourself clearly. Every morning, right when your mind hasn't yet been pulled into the chaos of the day, is the time when you can sit down, open a blank page, and begin to record what's really happening inside your mind. It doesn't need to be clear. It doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to make sense. It just needs to be real. Because what you write at that moment isn't an answer, it's a map. And if you're patient enough to write every day, you will gradually start to read the direction your inner world has been trying to whisper to you all along. I used to think writing was for people who had time, who were emotional, or who had talent. But then I realized successful people don't write because they have time. They write to keep time. They don't write because they are artists. They write because they are people who need to see themselves clearly before making any important decision. I know there are mornings you wake up with a mess of emotions you can't name. Writing is how you turn fog into light, chaos into a concrete form. When you write, you are slowing down, not to stay still, but to find direction. You don't have to write a lot, just 3 lines each morning. Write what you're thinking, what you're afraid of, what you're hoping for, or simply a question. What do I need today to move forward? However short, it is still a decisive act because you are taking charge of your thoughts instead of being led by them. You are no longer in a passive state of receiving. You are observing. You are adjusting. And from that adjustment of thought, you gradually gain control over behavior. Your body needs movement to stay strong. So does your mind. Writing is exercise for consciousness. Every word you put on the page is a repetition in intentional thinking. The more frequently you write, the more you develop your ability to recognize emotions, connect beliefs, filter out what's essential, and remove the excess. Writing transforms you from someone who merely feels into someone who understands, and from there, you begin your day, not in a fog, but with depth, with resilience, and with clarity in every decision. I'm not saying you need to write like a novelist, but I am telling you, write like someone serious about their future. Set aside a few minutes each morning before the world wakes you with messages or demands to sit down with a notebook and with yourself. That is the rare moment when you can clarify who you are, where you are going, and why that path is worth it. Great people don't remember their future with their minds. They write it down, not to display it, but to build it. If you're still hesitant, ask yourself, how many ideas have you thought of and then forgotten? How many sparks of inspiration have flashed and faded in the rush of life? How many goals have you spoken aloud but never clarified? Writing is how you keep those pieces, connect them into a solid structure. Writing is how you tell your mind, I'm listening, I am present, I am serious about this journey. Every word you write carries weight because you are turning the invisible into the visible. You are allowing yourself to be understood, to be reorganized, to be strengthened from the roots. And the miracle is, once you see your thoughts clearly on the page, you begin to see the next step clearly in real life. You are no longer someone driven by emotions. You become someone who shapes behavior from a deep understanding of yourself. I have lived through phases of life where everything was vague, no map, no direction, only a sense of dissatisfaction, but no idea where to begin. Not until I wrote every day in silence, unseen by anyone, did I realize I wasn't lacking solutions, I was lacking clarity. And writing gave that back to me. No recognition needed, no perfection required, just truth. Just you listening to yourself seriously and consistently. The rest will start to organize itself. Writing each morning is not a task. It is a privilege to access the truth within you before the world tries to stuff you with other definitions. Don't lose your own voice just because you didn't take the time to hear it. right. And then you'll see that voice hasn't just been waiting for you. It's been guiding you to your most exceptional self. You cannot build a strong day if you begin it with a sense of lack. Not a lack of money, time, or opportunity, but a lack of awareness of the true value you already possess. Each morning, you face two invisible choices: to step into the day with the mindset of someone who is whole, or with the mindset of someone who is depleted and must brace themselves against the world. And the difference does not lie in circumstances. It lies in where you place your attention. Gratitude is not a pleasant emotion meant to soothe your spirit. It is a strategy, a sharp psychological lever used by those who understand this truth. If you don't begin your day with gratitude, you will let comparison, disappointment, and demand take control of your thoughts. I'm not talking about reciting a hollow list every morning. I'm talking about the deliberate act of directing your mind toward the things that are working in your life, even the smallest ones. Because in the moment you recognize your current value, you move out of the mindset of I lack and into I have. And from that state, every action you take carries a completely different energy. When you operate from fullness, you don't strain. You don't try to prove anything. You create value from inner strength, not from a thirst for external validation. I used to begin my mornings under pressure to accomplish more, to achieve bigger results, to shorten time and move faster. Each morning, I woke up with a list of things I hadn't yet attained. And that made me feel perpetually not enough, not worthy, not quite there. But then I learned something that seemed simple. When I took just 3 minutes to think about what I was grateful for, that I still had breath, that the people I love were still with me, that I had another day to try again, my mind was immediately brought back to center. I no longer began with pressure, I began with presence. And from there, everything I did carried more calm, more focus, and more depth. You don't need a grand reason to be grateful. A warm cup of coffee, a ray of sunlight through your window, a body still capable of standing and walking, all are reasons. But what matters is not the objects themselves. It is your ability to return and recognize them. Gratitude doesn't make you weaker. On the contrary, it makes you more grounded. When you're aware of what you already have, you are no longer shaken by what others possess. You stop envying, you stop judging, you stop chasing superiority, because you are standing firmly in true inner sufficiency. I never begin my day without writing or speaking 3 things I'm grateful for. Writing, to etch it into my subconscious. Speaking, to hear my own voice affirm that fullness. Just a few lines, a few sentences, but the effect is profound because you are restructuring the lens through which you see the world. From there, you no longer act to fill a void. You act to express, to contribute, to radiate. And that's when you become naturally magnetic. People who live from gratitude don't need to try to impress. Their energy is already the most powerful introduction. You can start as soon as tomorrow morning. Before you pick up your phone, before you check your work, ask yourself, what am I grateful for today? Don't just think it. Say it out loud or write it down. Even if it seems trivial, the more specific, the better. The more sincere, the more effective. Let that moment become the emotional foundation of your day, because if you don't intentionally lay the foundation, the world will do it for you, and it never chooses fullness. I want you to understand this clearly. Gratitude doesn't extinguish ambition. It purifies it. When you live from a sense of sufficiency, you don't chase success to fill a hole inside. You pursue success to express the value that already exists within you. And that's why those who live from gratitude are capable of building more sustainable achievements, because they don't rely on outcomes to define their worth. They step into every journey with peace as their foundation, not desperation, pushing from behind. If you're feeling like you're not enough, pause. Don't try to force yourself forward through fear. Come back. Look at what already exists. Place your hand on your chest. Take a deep breath and recognize you're still here. Still have the chance to change, to choose, to live meaningfully. And that is the starting point of every power you seek, not from outside, but from within. From the very gratitude you nurture each morning. Beginning your day with gratitude is not a sentimental ritual. It is a strategic choice to enter this world with the mindset of someone who already has, not someone who is demanding. And from that place of fullness, not only do you work better, you live with more value. You don't need to wait for something big to be grateful. You just need to be awake enough to notice the small things, because sometimes it is those very small things that form the foundation of a truly solid life. Not everything you do in a day holds equal importance, and certainly not every task deserves your time, energy, or mental focus in the morning, a time when your mind is sharp, undisturbed, and capable of setting a clear direction for the rest of the day. That is why each morning you must not begin with busyness. You must begin with prioritization. One task only, one goal important enough that if completed would make the day feel meaningful. And I'm telling you this not as theory, but because I once lived the opposite way. I used to start my day with a dense list of tasks. I woke up already feeling pressured. Everything seemed urgent, and that urgency tricked me into thinking they were all important. But the more I did, the more exhausted I became. And the more tired I felt, the less progress I perceived. The truth was, I was acting without direction. I was moving a lot, but not actually moving forward. And only when I looked back did I realize a day full of motion is not always a day of progress. Because if you don't know where you're going, even if you move quickly, you could simply be running in circles inside a maze of your own making. You need an anchor at the start of your day, a question that no one else can answer for you. What is the one task, just one, that if I complete today will bring me closer to my long-term vision? That is your true priority. Everything else, however tempting or urgent, is just context. You don't need to control everything. You only need to do the right thing at the right time. And the most effective time to identify that one thing is every morning, before you become entangled in the needs and expectations of others. I want you to imagine this. If each morning you sit for just 3 minutes and write down one single line, today I need to complete, and then you devote your full presence to that task before doing anything else, what could you build in 30 days? Not just 30 outcomes, but a habit of clear direction, a sharpened decision-making ability, and an inner power immune to external noise. That's what leaders do. They don't let multitasking blur their priority. They choose less to go deeper. You don't need to wait for motivation to define your goal. In fact, defining a clear goal at the beginning of the day is how you generate motivation, because when you have a specific destination, every action has direction, every effort has meaning. You're no longer busy just to avoid the void. You're acting to fulfill a mission you've chosen, and the feeling of drawing closer each day to something that truly matters to you, that is the greatest source of energy. Be cautious with the feeling of doing a lot. The trap of busyness is this: it gives you a temporary sense of usefulness, but gradually steals your ability to focus on what creates long-term value. When you spend your entire morning reacting to emails, messages, small tasks, and urgent calls, you may be very busy, but you're not necessarily progressing. You're living by someone else's schedule, not your own goals. You must protect your morning time like a sacred zone, a space for clarity, priority, and purposeful action. Begin by choosing one most important goal, not 5, not 10, just one. Write it down, say it out loud, visualize it already completed, then act before doubt has a chance to enter. Because the longer you wait, the more opportunity you give distractions to invade. But if you act early and decisively, you establish momentum. And once you have momentum, you stop living in reaction, you start orchestrating. The difference between a productive day and a wasted one does not lie in how many tasks you do. It lies in whether you did the right task. And if that one right task is completed first thing in the day, it changes the tone of everything that follows. You'll move through all other tasks with the mindset of someone who's already won. You won't be chasing a sense of worth at the end, because you claimed it at the beginning. Let your mornings not be a maze of urgent things. Let them be a map of true priorities. Clarify what truly brings value. Choose one goal and make it non-negotiable. Because when you choose right and act right, that day is no longer random. It becomes a day with direction, a day with intention, a day worth living. And you are the one striking the first hammer on the statue your future is waiting for you to sculpt. Your real identity isn't shaped by noise, applause, or achievements. It's born in silence, in those first quiet minutes of the morning when no one is watching and nothing is demanding your attention. You meet the rawest version of yourself. Most people wake up and get pulled immediately into the world's chaos, but you have a choice to start your day with stillness, no screens, no tasks, just breath and presence. Stillness is not a luxury. It's where clarity begins. It's where the world's noise stops and your true voice starts to speak. In that space, your decisions aren't driven by fear, but by inner alignment. You no longer react, you lead. The most powerful people don't use stillness to escape. They use it to reconnect, not to perform, but to return to who they are underneath the noise. 10 quiet minutes a day won't make you passive. They'll make you unshakable. Stillness doesn't require rituals, just honesty, a breath, a question, and the courage to sit with what rises. That's where your truest identity lives, not in what you build, but in what you uncover when everything else fades.